All right, you have it. And we have the microphone next to that owl, and if you just put it back on.
Good morning. I'm Jody Ketterbuck. I am the newest member of your ambassador team. I am also the education associate. I'm based out of the Great Falls office. This is my 10th month with Montana Farmers Union, and this is the job I didn't know I needed. So I'm very passionate about agriculture and about education. I was an ag ed teacher, FFA advisor, 4-H leader for over 29 years, and truly loved all of that work. But the long hours and stressful travel with multiple high school kids who work my own, and time away from my home all took a huge toll on my health. Those in new production agriculture understand unpredictable schedules, maybe a blizzard, you know. Those of you who are wives and mothers and caretakers understand the mental stress of taking care of your own as well as other people. And there have been so many times in my life that I should have found this next speaker. So burnout is a very common battle that all of us face in all kinds of situations in our lives. And so I am thrilled to introduce our next speaker, who is an associate professor in health and human development at Montana State University and the health and wellness specialist for MSU Extension. She received her PhD in medical anthropology in 2016 and has spent the past 10 years researching the sociocultural and environmental determinants of non-communicable diseases and subjective well-being in rural areas. Over the last 5 years, she has spearheaded the MSU Extension Farm and Ranch Stress Reduction Initiative, which seeks to uncover stressors that impact agricultural producers throughout the state and provide easily accessible resources for both stress reduction and mental wellness. So without further ado, Michelle, it's all yours.
Gosh, thank you. Hi, everybody. I see all of you in the distance. I wanted to start with thanks so much for having me. I really wish I could be there in person. I think this would be a little more fun to present in person, but due to the weather yesterday, I just could not get there. But I'm glad to see that many of you have in fact arrived safely. And I do want to hear about the line dancing yesterday evening. I would have loved to join that. Anyway, as was said, my name is Michelle. I'm the health and wellness specialist with MSU Extension. And my co-presenter here, Jackie Beardsley, I don't know, many of you might know her. She's over in Powder River County. Her and I do a lot of work on the science of stress, farm and ranch stress management. And today, in the next 45 minutes, I wanted to focus on two kind of key components. So burnout, what that is. I mean, the intro a little bit summed it up, but we'll start there, but spend the majority of 45 minutes, so really about 35 minutes, just diving into some, I think, really applicable, tangible, easy to use stress management strategies. I know this is a little bit hard with me presenting virtually, but if anyone has a question along the way, please raise your hands. I actually had a lot of handouts and activities. I will try to do a couple of them via Zoom, but I can't really see too many of you. So maybe someone in the front can help me, but we'll see how this goes. All right. So seminar goals, real quick. I do want, the term burnout does get thrown around a lot. So I want us all to come together and understand the definition, even though I don't think it's all that fitting for the agricultural occupation, but I'll explain that in a minute. I am going to present some both in the moment, things we can do right when we're faced with a stressor, and kind of long-term habitual stress management techniques that I'll introduce today, realizing we might not, if it's the first time someone's heard them, it might be pretty hard to implement them starting this afternoon. But at least we'll learn what they are and maybe make some longer term plans. Then towards the end, I want to have us all take a moment to learn when self-care is not enough. So both for you, a family member, a neighbor, a friend, be able to identify those signs and symptoms. And then at the very end, I'll increase, hopefully, everybody's awareness of some new Montana-based resources to help support yourself and others. All right, so as I stated, I don't love the definition of burnout, and I'll tell you why in a second, but here it is. This is the World Health Organization's definition that came about in 2019 and is the one that is most often used. And so you can see that it's conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress. So key word there being workplace that has not been successfully managed, characterized by three dimensions. So this sort of constant feeling of energy depletion, exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job. So you might be doing the task physically, but your mind is somewhere else. Feeling like quite negative or cynical feelings about what you're doing in the workplace, and reduced professional efficacy. Here's the part that I think gets a little tricky. Burnout refers specifically to a phenomena in the occupational context and should not be applied to describe experiences in other areas of life. So the reason why I don't find this applicable, and raise your hand if you feel like, well, goodness, I work on a farm or a ranch. My life is also my workplace. I wake up, walk outside, there I am, and it's very hard to distinguish between home life. Now, I can't really see anyone, but I wonder if anyone's raising their hand. Home life and work life. And that's why I think this definition is a little bit tricky to work with within the space of agriculture. Does anyone agree with me and feel like this is a little bit hard of a definition to? Yes, I think I see some hands. Thank you, whoever, the person in the lovely red blouse in the front, I can see you. But keeping with this definition, if we were to think about, okay, here are the things. I do feel depleted energy. I do oftentimes feel cynical. I do feel like I have some bit of reduced professional efficacy. We're going to do something that I do with in my classes and teachings a lot, but a fist to 5. What is your current level of burnout? This is subjective. I'm just asking you to think about this on the spot. Raise your hand in a fist if you don't feel any of this. 3 is a little bit like, yeah, yes, but I'm sort of managing it. And a 5 is, oh my goodness, I feel this all the time and I'm really having a hard time managing. And I don't know if anyone in the front can tell me kind of generally what we're seeing in the audience. This is hard.
3s and 4s. 3s and 4s.
3s and 4s. 3s and 4s. Okay.
Okay, raise your hand if you're at 0.
Do we have it?
Raise your hand if you're 1. 3. Raise your hand if you're at 5. 1. 4. About half 3.
Okay, so I would say if you find yourself 2, 3, 4, certainly not alone, and even 5, and hopefully some of the stress management tools and tips that I'll share today will be helpful. I wanted to take a minute and just talk about why specifically women in agriculture tend to feel the burnout a lot more than men. Granted, there is some bias when you look at research. Women tend to negate or lower the feelings of stress and say, oh, it's okay. You know, I got this, I can handle it. So even I think some of the recent statistics and the research probably is lower than reality. So currently, 31% of all American farmers, I'm going to say, when I say farmers, I'm saying this farmers and ranchers, but please just bear with me for the kind of sake of time. I'll go with farmers, are women. 1.2 million are agricultural producers. And when we look at, there's been some research that really looks at thousands of women in ag, and the top health issue has been cited as stress for the last couple of years in a row. Um, there was a recent study by some colleagues of ours over in Illinois just last year, and they brought up they found some really interesting points when interviewing over 900 females in the agricultural occupation. And I have these things bulleted, but they found that the odds for women to experience depression due to geographic isolation were 4 times higher than that of men, even when faced with very similar stressors. And this next bullet I find really fascinating, though I kind of think to my own family and think to my own husband, and I kind of get it. Um, but male farmers were significantly more likely to report high social support from their significant other. Like, that is to say, in the interviews, they said, well, I have a supportive wife, I have a supportive spouse, I have my support system in the home, and that's kind of all I need. Compared to women in the sample who really needed support from the community, from friends, from other women. And that was one of the big differences of why feelings of anxiety, stress, depression were so much higher for women than for men, a little bit because of what they needed to then themselves not feel as lonely, isolated, and stressed. This third bullet was touched on a little bit in the introduction, but women, I mean, I would say, I mean, if you think about there's research been done in the agricultural occupation, there are still a lot of traditional gender roles. So when we think about managing domestic labor, taking care of kiddos, doing all of these other things in addition to farm and ranch work, it's the women who are doing this like double third duty and all of this invisible work that comes along with that. We did a survey in Montana 2 years ago and surveyed a lot of women producers. And on top of this, many women also said, well, we also actually do a lot more of the finances and balancing the books. So, I mean, it's almost like 4 jobs, which I'm sort of speaking to the choir here, everybody in the room. But just to sort of set this context about why we're seeing a lot more higher rates of stress in women as compared to men in agriculture. Okay, let me move on. So sometimes I'll give a talk that just is focused for a whole hour on the science of stress or what happens within our bodies and within our minds when we're faced with a stressor. Again, I only have 45 minutes, so I want to spend a lot of time talking about the stress management piece of this, but I want to pause here for a couple of minutes and just take us through why these stress management techniques are so beneficial. So raise your hand if you've heard of the fight-flight response. Great. Okay. So you're faced with a stressor. Doesn't matter what it is. Maybe the tractor broke down. Maybe you got into a fight with a kiddo about something in the morning. Maybe it's been a drought or a fire or whatever the stressor is, right? The point is the stressor doesn't so much matter what the stressor is. You're faced with a stressor and we're all human, right? This is an evolutionary adaptation. We're faced with a stressor and our sympathetic nervous system activates. Our autonomic nervous system has 2 parts, the sympathetic part and the parasympathetic part. And the sympathetic part is actually really cool, evolutionarily speaking. It's what, gets us, when you hear those stories on the news about someone being able to lift a car and, the dog was stuck under it, or you have motivation to do something, right? You can perform at your utmost highest level. So those, thousands of years ago, that's what gave us better eyesight real quick, more blood pumping through our bodies to get oxygen circulating. Our blood can clot faster in the sympathetic nervous system. We see better, we hear better. All these things can happen when the sympathetic nervous system's activated. When that happens, you cannot control this. There's not much you can do, but you will experience a physiological response. So that's either fight, flight, those are the 2 most commonly known, freeze, or fawn. And sometimes you might be experiencing a mix of those, right? And again, that's very natural. It's you can't control it. It just happens to our bodies. But I have these little cards. I would have given them all as handouts. I made little cards for everyone. I'm happy to send them if I somehow can do that. Or if you'd like any of these resources, maybe let someone know and I can send out little packages everywhere. Um, but if you're feeling fight, that's kind of where I go when I experience a physiological response. Your body kind of believes it can overpower the threat. You'll respond in fight mode. So that may lead to aggression, feelings of anger, your skin might get flushed, tight jaw, sometimes the urge to hurt someone, desire to place blame, and you show resistance. Others, you may flight. That might be your go-to response. You're faced with that stressor and you say, oop, I can't overcome this. I'm going to avoid it. I'm going to run away. You might feel tense or trapped, restless, feelings of numbness, dilating, kind of darting eyes. Freeze, you're not doing anything. You're not fighting, you're not flighting, you're just kind of stuck there, frozen. Um, Though, if that tends to be your go-to, you kind of have a sense of dread of stressors, pale skin, your body feels stiff and heavy. You might hear your like heart beating and though a decreased heart rate. And then fawn, this is a relatively new one in the literature. I'd say the past 10 years, we've seen a lot more written about this. But fawn is normally used to describe a physiological stress response if the stressor is another person or a social setting. And if you respond by like being a people pleaser, always saying yes, doing what that stressor wants to ensure your safety, that's what we're talking about with fawn mode. And you're kind of the one who's always over agreeing, being overly helpful, and that people pleaser. So I guess show of hands, sometimes we know exactly when we see these, oh, that's the one I go to. But how many of you are with me and consider yourselves like that fight is your physiological stress response? Okay, I see a couple of people, I think, in the left side of the room. What about flight? Any flight? Okay, I think some people in the back. Freeze? Couple freeze and fawn. Couple fawn. So kind of, I mean, and really that if we were to take all humans, it is about, everyone has their own response. Sometimes you might have two. The point here is that it's natural, you can't control it, and it all happens when we're faced with that stressor and that sympathetic nervous system's activated. So one other point, and I'll move on. We can operate really efficiently if our sympathetic nervous system is operated or heightened for a little bit, and then we can bring it back down. And then our parasympathetic takes over, also known as rest and digest. And then we're faced with a stressor and we deal with it, and then it comes down. That's kind of how we want to know enough about stress management strategies that our sympathetic nervous system isn't heightened all the time. Because when we can't bring it back down ourselves, imagine living in that state for minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years. That's when you start to see all these health implications, chronic disease, diabetes, hypertension, all of these negative outcomes. Like that saying, stress kills. It's really the sympathetic nervous system that is just working in overdrive. So I'm trying to keep an eye on the time here, but what we're going to go over today together are some short-term and then some long-term stress management tools that hopefully one of these resonates with you. And next time there's a stressor or you feel like, oof, this is going to be a really hard conversation, you can implement these things before in preparation for maybe knowing something might be less than calm. And so that you're actually telling your brain, it's okay, we're going to remain calm and keep that parasympathetic nervous system heightened. Okay, if there's any questions, please just let me know. So the first two that we're going to do together are controlled breathing exercises. These are fabulous. I like them in part because nobody needs to know you're doing them. My husband, he's a wildland firefighter, and we always have lots of conflict, like right when he gets home from a fire. And I've been with kids and work and house and all the stuff. And I don't know, maybe some of you can imagine this scenario. But we've at this point both gotten into the habit of when he gets home, he parks his truck in the driveway, does one of these before he comes inside. And I'm sort of doing the same thing inside. And things have gotten a lot better just from implementing some of these breathing techniques. Then we're going to go into something that's a little bit more long term. It's called the Healthy Mind Platter. And then, like I said before, we'll talk about bullets 4 and 5 at the end. All right. So, show of hands, does anyone implement controlled breathing kind of regularly, daily to help as a stress management tool? Ooh, like that whole table, I think, in the corner, maybe. Great. So there are a lot of these. I would say the most common is box breathing. I chose not to do this one with you all because a lot of people know box breathing. Here's another one. I really like this. It's called 4-7-8 breathing. And I want to go to the why first before the how. So this is also known as an emptying breath. So it's again a strategy to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, your the opposite of sympathetic, so your rest and digest. It just helps you calm down. Also, right now there's a lot of colds and viruses going on. This breathing technique actually helps you empty your lungs of stagnant air, which unless you're doing this, you're probably not really emptying your lungs all that often. And it also helps us fall asleep because it's really good in kind of relaxing the body. So we'll do two of these together. What we're going to do is inhale to a count of 4, hold for a count of 7, and then this is actually kind of tricky. We're going to exhale slowly to the count of 8. And you can kind of let out a big like sigh at the end. All right, so hopefully someone does this with me, but I will demonstrate and let's do it together. All right, so we're gonna inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, let's do it one more time. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Yeah, I can't really see anyone's face, but I hope this is a lovely thing to do. Again, no one needs to know you are doing this. I probably do this 3 or 4 times a day when I know that I might have a less than pleasant work meeting, or, maybe I've asked my kiddo to put his pants on like 8 times. It's just a lovely thing to do to, again, what you're that autonomic nervous system. So when there's a stressor, you're not going right into the sympathetic nervous system being activated. The second kind of short-term exercise that I really like to do, and this one I would say is a little bit more beneficial when your mind is racing and you're thinking, oh my gosh, there are 8 things that I have to think about right now, like that mental load, and you need to reground and refocus in order to do anything productive or remain calm. Again, the why, it can help in periods of anxiety or panic, help you ground and be more in the present. So if your mind is all over the place. So I love doing this outside, but you can certainly do this in a conference room. So we'll do it all together. And what we're going to do is, as you can see on the screen here, we're going to activate all of our senses. And so if you do this, you actually have to be focused in the present into your own body. And so if you're doing this, then your thoughts will just automatically calm down. Okay, so I want everyone to just kind of sit quietly and think of and name them to yourself 5 things you can see. And once you've done that, 4 things you can touch and actually kind of like you can move around the table, pick up different things, material of sweater you're wearing, 4 things you can touch and describe them to yourself. And then 3 things you can hear. 2 things you can smell. And 1 thing you can taste. For me, this is always coffee. All right, that's another one really useful. It's very widely used in professional counseling settings, really in that space when things are going a little bit wild. We don't know how to refocus. Just remember 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding. And if you kind of mess up the see, touch, hear, I mean, it really doesn't matter. Just 5 things, pick a sense, and go through all of them. And I promise you, it'll help activate the parasympathetic and help you feel calmer. And this may sound so silly, but we have so much evidence that chronic health conditions and even things that are contagious, right? I mean, you're more likely to get the flu or get other things when you have high stress levels and a lot of cortisol pumping around your body. So I promise that implementing some of these more regularly will help with your health. All right, so now again, I really don't want to go over time, so I'm going a little bit faster than I think I would like to, but we will keep going. So this is, now I want us to shift gears. Those were really short term. I'm going to do this right in the moment. This is something that I'm going to encourage you all to think about, not just today, maybe on your drive home, over the next couple of months, weeks and months, and think about how we can spend more time in each of these mental states. So this is called the Healthy Mind Platter. How many of you have heard of like My Plate for like nutrition education? So it's similar to this. Doctors Rock and Siegel, they're both neuroscientists. They came up with the Healthy Mind Platter a couple of years ago, and they did a lot of neuroscience work, and it's so fascinating. But they basically say that if all humans could spend a little bit of time, and there's really no prescription in terms of how much time, but a little bit of time each day in each of these mental states, that would make for actually optimum brain health and mental health. So I'm going to introduce all of these. What I would normally do if I was sitting there next to you is I would actually hand everybody this sheet of paper, the mental wellness menu. So if you happen to have a sheet of paper in front of you, you can kind of jot down things as I go, but the activity is as I describe each of these mental states, think about an activity that you already do that falls in this, something maybe that you haven't done for years, but it would fall in this and you'd like to get back into it. And then I want us to think about what's the thing we're really good at doing and what's the thing that we never do. Because again, the idea is to do a little bit of all of these every single day for stress management and mental wellness. And again, I can send these if anyone wants them. Okay, so I'm going to go through all the 7. I don't go in this order, but these are the 7. So the first one is sleep. This is so under celebrated, I guess. I can't think of the right word when it comes to stress management. I'm gonna bring all of these states of mind, like from a neuroscience perspective of why this is important. But when you're sleeping, all the learning that's happened throughout the day is consolidated. Like we're able to improve our memory, remember the to-do tasks, remember like where we put something, or like those things get consolidated with good quality sleep. Um, Their 7 hours of sleep is the recommended, and 30% of Montana adults report not sleeping that long. And I get it, like during calving season, or there's times of the year where this is absolutely impossible. New research does show that napping, like kind of banking your sleep before losing a lot of sleep, like let's say you're going into calving season and you know this is going to be, you're not going to get a lot of sleep. Taking naps, sleeping extra before actually does help. Um, Sleep is actually a highly active state for things like I mentioned, like memory consolidation, semantic integration, like remembering our calendars, our to-do lists, and processing our emotions. There's new research that says most depression associated with long work hours is actually a result of sleep deprivation. And if you think about, operating heavy machinery, things you might do, in your daily lives as farmers and ranchers, without sleep, it's almost the equivalent of having a blood alcohol level that is unfit for driving. And that same actual like lack of response time can happen when we're not sleeping. So that's sort of how the doctors who came up with this start this with let's first focus on sleep. And again, that 5-7-8 breathing technique is a really good thing to do right like when you're in bed if you can't fall asleep. The next thing, oh, yes.
You said that naps could be banked early, but can you catch up?
No, I know. I wish we could. Yes. I was really excited when the research came out about banking sleep because for a long time it was, well, you couldn't really bank, you couldn't really catch up. But now new studies, and we have a really cool sleep lab here at MSU, they're proving this to be true through another study, but you can bank. So at least that's exciting. But no, we can't catch up. Um, Thanks for that's a great question. This one, I would say most people say they don't spend a lot of time in this, but I want to give a plug for playtime. We definitely value playtime with kids, toddlers, adolescents, right? We're like, gosh, go out and play. Play is so important. The two scientists that created this said play is equally as important for adults. It's only in playtime when we actually can build new neuro connections in our brain. And that helps us be more better at problem solving, more innovative, more creative. And you can do this at any point in your life. I mean, you can still build neuro connections, if you're 95 years old. And a recent survey we did with ag producers in Montana said, well, we actually really need help with problem solving as a stress management technique. And so spending more time in playtime, as counterintuitive as that sounds, will actually help you maybe think of a solution to something that you've been toiling over, or come up with a new idea, or be more innovative. That's the plug and the next state of mind, which is playtime. Downtime, again, another one that I think all of us that are really busy, feel like we have 3 jobs, don't really spend a lot of time in. But this is really important for recharging the brain, and this is downtime. I like the quote on the second bullet. Downtime is intentionally having no intention of consciously engaging in doing nothing specific. And I'm not saying spend 6 hours a day in this state, maybe 5 minutes, but maybe if you're walking around your property or you're in between talks, like instead of scrolling on the phone, sitting somewhere and just like looking around or spending a moment outside, observing your surroundings. I mean, just integrating a little bit of downtime. So what this does, neuroscience speaking, is it permits our brains to kind of sort through a lot of items that are to-dos or stressing us out or that we're ruminating about from the past. And this downtime actually allows us to sort of subconsciously differentiate things that we've been thinking about. And again, I don't want, like, no one magically has 20 more hours in a day, but maybe think about your own day, your week, and when you might be able to plan a little bit more time for downtime. The next one's time in. This one's a little bit different because instead of just consciously doing nothing, we're actually spending some time and time in reflecting on what has happened. Does anyone do any sort of like journaling or gratitude journaling? Yes, couple of hands. I am a huge fan of the gratitude journal. It would put you squarely in this time in. But also, as humans, we have a negativity bias, meaning that we tend to see the negative in situations and people. And so, this gratitude journaling really allows us to write down what we're thankful for, write down who in our life has maybe done an act of kindness. And so the time in really helps us kind of, again, activate our parasympathetic, but also with stress management, because by writing things down, you've labeled it, you've distanced yourself from that stressor. And so it has a lot of benefits. The next one, I would say, we now have research to prove that next to sleep, this one might be the most important. There's some new research from Health and Human Services that suggests that if we were to take all the indicators, like all the health indicators, so how much we're drinking alcohol, how much we're walking, how much physical activity, you name it, XYZ, how much money our household brings in, all the indicators. The most important indicator for determining length of life is connection time. How socially connected we feel to others. And I'm not saying like 1,000 Facebook friends, but connecting, being socially connected to maybe 3 or 4 other individuals where you really feel like you can share things about your life, things that have been troubling, successes, happy times. And so it really does have like healing power, these relationships. We've also seen in the research, social support has increased recovery from open heart surgeries. It has staved off or decreased rates of getting things like cardiovascular disease, hypertension, diabetes. So it has a lot of connection with our physical health. And this last one, I mean, having positive social support reduces the likelihood of negative outcomes in the wake of stressful events, which I'm sure we all know to some degree, but now we really have the research to say this is so important, the connection time. Let's see. This one, physical time, again, like you can certainly double dip, if you will, right? Like go for a walk with a friend, which would be connection time and physical time all in one. But this state of mind is on the healthy mind platter because physical activity does so much more than for our physical health. I mean, it does so much for our mental health, in addition to our physical health. Again, our learning and memory is bolstered when we're more physically active. There have been a lot of studies recently that show that it slows the onset of Alzheimer's and dementia if you are physically active. And by that, I mean engaging in at least 22 minutes of moderate aerobic or cardio activity a day. Like some people say, well, what do you mean? I mean, I walk around, I do all these things. What does it mean to be physically active? And the new standards are so 22 minutes of being like a little bit out of breath when you're walking fast or doing something, and doing strength training 2 times a day, or excuse me, 2 times a week. And there's so many connections between the brain's plasticity, the simple act of moving, walking more, really helps us, again, better understand our emotions, regulate our autonomic nervous system, and again, be able to form new connections in our brain. The next one, and this is the last one. So this is focus time. This one's hard, I think, especially now when our phones are buzzing and there's news everywhere and it's very hard to get distracted. But focus time is all about focusing on a task in a goal-oriented way. So for example, I mean, I have a desk job primarily, unless I'm out and about, maybe doing like talks or something. But if I were to be working on a project and every time my email dings, I like fly over to the screen and look at that email. That is the opposite of what I'm talking about. Being focused on a writing project or like building something or like, doing something on your farm and ranch where you're really just focused on that task. That in neuroscience, the ability to do that is the number one indicator of mental fitness. How well can we focus on the task without getting distracted? And the reason that this is such an important indicator is that you need a very well-developed prefrontal cortex where we have all of our like executive functioning where that happens, to be able to do that. So when you're either like don't have enough stimulation, like AKA you're bored, or you're overstimulated, which is where most of us are, you're stressed and there's 1,000 things to do, it slowly starts to wear on our ability to execute these executive functions. And the nice thing is, though, you can rebuild that functioning by including focus time every day. So whether that is, um, really focusing in on the meal you're cooking or the task you're doing, outside or in your job or whatever it is. So I really encourage doing this. I mean, not only because it's fun and gets us really into the task, but for the brain health, for the mental fitness that it provides. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this menu. And I want everyone, because research also shows that if we write down a goal, we are more likely to do it than if we just think about it. And if we tell the person sitting next to us, we're even more likely to do it. So I want us all to write down the one state of mind where we're just not spending a lot of time in and we really want to spend more time in. And then the other one I want you to write down is the one that you're really good at, that you do this nearly every day. So take a minute. Rachel, do we have 5 more minutes?
You need to wrap up.
Okay.
But we have 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll get done in 5 minutes. Okay. All right. So I would normally say share with your partner. Maybe if this is exciting, you'll share with them over lunch. But give yourself the goal of spending a little bit more time in that one you circled where you're just not spending maybe any time or enough time. Okay, so real quick, we've talked a lot about these sort of you helping yourself with stress management in the short term and these sort of more like long-term habitual things. But there does come a point when self-help just isn't enough. And this might be for yourself, this might be for a family member, this might be a friend. And so I just wanted to put up on this slide that if you notice any of these things, I mean, it might be beyond these stress management techniques where counseling or some professional help might be needed. And so we've created at MSU Extension, you can get these for free, these handouts, but it's a flow chart of responding. It's called Responding to People Under Pressure Under the Big Sky. But let's say, there's a family friend and you're not really seeing them often. When you do, you notice something is really up. You can follow the flow chart and it'll tell you kind of if this, then that. And at the end, lead to some great resources. One of them is this card. So this is, we've worked with Montana State Department of Agriculture and Beyond the Weather and Northern Ag Broadcasting to bring free counseling to anyone in ag. They're located in Billings. They are a telehealth counseling service, but I don't know, maybe I'll email Rachel this number, but please feel free to use it and pass it around. And then I don't know how many of you have visited our Farm Stress Resource Clearinghouse online. We've had over 21,000 views. There's lots of fun stuff on this website. If you just go to any browser and type in Montana Farm Stress, you'll get here. the front page of the website looks like this. You can measure your stress online. It'll tell you how you're doing, and it'll tell you to go to a other page on the site depending on your stress level. You can think of ways to manage your stress, learn more about mental health, and has all sorts of interesting resources. So let me know if you need more there. And I'm done. I hope that was helpful, and sorry it was a bit rushed. And I'm around for questions if anyone has any. Thank you. And I do see there's some chats. Oh, great. Bernadette is saying definitely use box breathing beyond the weather. Okay. Um, yes, we've tried to partner with enough people in the state that we're all doing things together instead of all in silos. So that's been lovely.
Thank you so much for all of that practical information. I had not seen the platter, and so that's something I'm going to really take a look at. Montana Farmers Union feels very strongly about this topic, as does National Farmers Union. And so part of your Farmers Union membership benefits is some additional access to resources. And on the member benefit page that's out in the foyer, we do have those. We also have the magnets out there that have the resources that she was showing. And I did not get a chance to look up the number, but Montana Farmers Union has a podcast called Lunch and Learn. And we do have a rural mental health resource episode that was done a couple of months ago. So thank you. And it is now time to head over. Nope, Rachel's got something else.
Real quick. It is lunchtime. Just while I have you all here, I want to recognize, we have some Montana animal proteins in our lunch. So I want to recognize those producers. Yeah. So we have some ground beef from Kimmel Ranch in Montana, and we also have Montana lamb and beef ground lamb today at lunch. And Montana lamb and beef is actually our own Mary Jenny's company. And Kimmel Ranch are members as well. And then the Keys Ranch has also provided ground lamb, and they are also Farmers Union members, which is exciting. And we'll have more Eden's microgreens included in our meal today at lunch. I'll have the full menu card up on the screen while we're eating. We've got about an hour for lunch, so take the time to enjoy chatting with your neighbor at your table. I will have a Farmers Union update at some point during the lunch. And then just a reminder that we will take a group photo over by the fireplace at about 1:20. Following that, we'll come back into the Grizzly Room here for our skincare breakout session with Sean and Macaulay. So let's go enjoy some good lunch. Thanks all.
Thank you, Michelle.
Bye.
That was awesome. Thank you. Thank you.